Hello everyone and welcome to chapter 1 of my CoH3 Scenario Editor tutorial. Um, this first chapter I know isn't the first video I've done. I've done a couple streams that have helped out a lot of people, as far as I'm aware. Um, Before I really get started in doing kind of uh, a more planned approach, I just wanted to go ahead and cover a few things I've learned over the past few days since launch that I think need to come out sooner rather than later because there's a few important tips and tricks I've learned. And then after this video, the next videos coming out, they're going to be more structured, not necessarily scripted, but it's going to be less off the cuff, and I'm going to try to explain things in detail again in a more structured format. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is how to convert your Company of Heroes 2 map into Company of Heroes 3. And conversion has big air quotes around it because you're not really converting anything. What you're going to be doing is bringing in your Company of Heroes 2 minimap image into Company of Heroes 3 and building your map using that as a template, as a guide. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our CoH2 map, our editor, and we want to understand that the mini map, that the tactical map, is just the playable area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my files and I'm going to find the TGA file for this map. So what we're going to do is we're going to take note of our terrain, of our playable area, because this is the super important thing, because this is what the minimap is taking account of, and we're going to need to know these values. So we're going to go scenario, terrain properties. It tells us right here, playable width, playable height. So when we open CoH3, we know we want our map. Our map is going to be 384 by 448. So we're going to open the CoH3 editor. We're going to create a new mod. We're going to create a scenario. We're going to call this for Black Forest. And just to be safe, I like to duplicate scenario name and display name. We're going to click Advanced, and we're going to adjust our terrain size and our playable area to be the same, and it's going to be our playable width and height here. So we're going to terrain size is going to be 384 by 448. Going to hit OK. Next, I'm going to just adjust this to the folder I want that I'm putting my maps in. I'm going to hit OK, finish. So you can see we've got kind of an odd thing here where our our playable area with our grid here is the exact same as our terrain width. We're going to change this later, don't worry about it. What we're going to want to do is go to File, Import, and we want to import our maps TGA file. I've already made a shortcut for myself, so we're going to open this up, and bam, we have our TGA file perfectly to scale as far as I'm aware. So what we're then going to want to do is we're going to go back here and we're going to note our terrain width and height. We are playing with 448 by 640. So we're going to go back to our editor, our CoH3 editor, scenarios, resize, and remember we want our values to be, we're going from 384 to 448. 384 goes up to 448. So we're increasing by 64 meters. Okay, so we're going to do old terrain offset. We're going to pump this up to 64. We're going to go the other way. Yeah, we want the middle. So we're going to do half of the difference is going to be our terrain offset. And here, this 448, just to double check, is going to become 640. So we're going to make this 640. So we're going to go 640 minus 448, 192, divided by 2 because we want the middle. And we're going to bump this down to negative 96. And as you can see, our pink little rectangle, which is our new area, is going to, we want it to fit perfectly within the box here. We're going to hit OK. And then it's a bit weird, as you can see. But the other thing here is your terrain. So the new terrain generated isn't, it has a height of, I believe, 0. Whereas our default height, our default height we set to is 10. We're just going to make this a really big brush, set height to 10. We're going to reduce the feather because we don't need it. Should make everything 10. Now we've got our map. It's properly sized, and we can go ahead and start drawing things out, painting our splines. Okay, so now that we've got our height adjusted, everything looks more or less normal. So let's say to be extra safe, I want to preserve this as the base, and I want to maybe work on this map in another mod, but I want to make sure I can come back to this version later if I have questions or issues or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And now what you're going to want to do to duplicate your map is you're going to want to, first of all, make sure it's saved. You're going to say new mod, empty extension, next. You're going to ask us for our title. So we're going to say duplicate black forest, duplicate black forest. We're going to save this wherever. I'm just going to stick it in the same folder so we don't get lost later on. Hit finish. And right now our mod looks like this, totally blank. There's nothing here. But we're going to go down to file and open. Not open mod, open. And we're going to find our scenario file. So we're going to go documents, going to go CoH3 maps. We're going to go to our 4-person black forest that we just made. We're going to go to assets, scenarios, multiplayer, map name, and here is our scenario file. We're going to open this, and bam, we have our new mod, duplicate black forest, but we have our original scenario. Now to save the original scenario's map into the new scenario, we're going to go to File, Save As, and we're going to, just to be safe, we're going to bring up the File Explorer. We're going to go open where our 4-person, our original mod scenario file is located. So we've got this. This is going to be our reference point, okay? Over here, we're going to, I can't minimize that, shoot. Well, anyway, over here, I'm going to move this to my second monitor. That's the big advantage of having a second screen. But we're going to want to duplicate, this file path into our new empty scenario. So here in the Save As, we're going to go to our Maps folder. We're going to go to our duplicate map. We're going to go to Assets. And then we're going to see this is pretty empty. So if we bring this up, we're going to need to create the Scenarios folder, the Multiplayer folder, and the Map Name folder, all within each other. So we're going to go to New Folder, Scenarios, just double check, Scenarios, Multiplayer. We're going to do Map Name. So this is going to be duplicate black forest. So this is going to be the name of your new mod, not your old mod, your new mod. And then we're going to go save ours. We're going to make a new folder. I don't know if it's necessary, but this is just the way the files are structured. So we're going to make another folder with the exact same name as our mod, but we're going to save it in this folder. So we're going to make sure we get our titles all the same, but then put a .scenario here so it knows to save it in here. If you don't put the .scenario, it'll save it in this folder and it'll be confusing. We hit save. And now all of a sudden you notice the scenario file here changes. So now, if we close out of the program, I don't know why I'm getting that error. Nothing's wrong as far as I can tell. Everything's working. So we're going to open our original mod here. And just to show you that there's something different, let's go ahead and put down a victory point just around the middle. So now our map is different. We've got a victory point here. Great. We're going to save this. Okay. We're going to open mod, and we're going to open our duplicate black forest. We're not going to open the scenario file. We're going to open the CoH3 mod file. We're going to hit open. We're going to let it do its thing. And as you can see, there is no victory point here. So now we have two independent mods with two independent scenario files, and we are all good to go. So from this point on, you have your backup mod, you have your new mod, and you can work with whichever you want. There are a few other things I want to show you. They're not directly related to kind of preparing your map for conversion, but they're just, like I said earlier, a few miscellaneous things I wanted to touch on to help people that are already getting familiar with the scenario editor. Kind of for them, some little tips and tricks. One thing I forgot to note is that to erase this after you've painted your terrain and everything, we're going to pump this up to, let's say, 32. Now, the right mouse brush is by default set to erase. So you go to terrain, color map, and you right click, and you're erasing your map that you painted on. So after you've got all your splines laid out, you can just go ahead and erase this so you don't get that overlap. You won't get this kind of impacting the way the ground looks. So one thing that doesn't really work is importing the height map. It comes in, it's also importing a TGA file, and it just presents kind of a gradient of color, but I don't think it's the most accurate because I did manage to get it to work with KPen, renowned co-map maker, but he said it really restricts what you're able to do, and it just isn't viable to import the actual height. And then the visual height map is also impacted by the color of the terrain, so it isn't totally accurate. So it is unfortunate, but you're going to have to manually paint the height anyway. And manually painting the height, I think, is a good idea because we have that additional mechanic in CoH3. So just keep in mind that you start getting height bonuses at a 4-meter difference between units. So the next thing I wanted to chat about are your blockers. So if you're familiar with my original Black Forest map, if you're not, it's okay. But a lot of the blockers, because it's a forest map, are trees and groves. So you can see here we've got big groves here, some kind of smaller ones here in the middle, big grove here. We've got a big kind of hedgerow I made here. We don't have that much freedom in CoH3 because we just don't have as many tree assets and groves. But the way to make blockers in CoH3 is a bit tricky. So we're going to go to our object browser, EBPS, environment, nature, cliffs, rocks. If you're making a desert map, you want the African set. If not, just stay here. And let's say we want to recreate this blocker. So everything is more or less to scale. Well, it should be exactly scaled. So you're good to go. And especially because when we import the file, it's not, off center a little bit. It's exactly where we need it to be. So you don't have to worry about, moving something over a couple meters because we didn't get it painted on correctly. So we're going to go ahead and right click on this cliff. But as you can see, it's huge. Maybe not the best shape. Let's go over to the large O2 cliff. Again, maybe not the best shape. O3, I don't like the way it looks. O4A, I think this could work. It's a bit square. So we're just going to try to carefully, this is the hard part, right? Because you can't adjust opacity of an object. So let's say we want to plop it in right here, but we notice there's a bit of foliage here on the side, and there's some here as well. So let's say we want to scale this up. We can go to scale, go to like 1.1, and we notice it got a little bigger. Right? Oh, 1.0. Yeah. Got a little bigger. You can also use keyboard shortcuts in your transformation here, your transformation panel here. So we just go to R, rescale, and we left click, and we can scale however we want. Okay, let's bring this back up to our desired value. So the way to make blockers in this game work, especially if you're scaling your cliffs, you're going to want to set them to a visual object because I mentioned this before, but the kind of the hitbox of your rock does not change based on its size, as far as I know. I think it's a bug. I don't know if it's intended, but the workaround is to put blockers around here and set this to a visual object. So we're going to very easily right click on our object here. All the way down, we're going to do to visual. As you can see, the little blue cube changed to a black and white eye. And we lost the grid underneath, which denotes that this is no longer impassable. Its units are going to walk right through this in game. What we're going to do is we're going to add a spline. And we're going to make this a wall mode spline because we want a wall of blockers around the base. So we're going to do wall component. Okay. And we're going to right click here. And we're going to say we want an entity. Under blueprints here on the property windows for the entity itself. So we're going to go over here. It's going to bring up essentially the object browser. You see EBPS. So we want to go to gameplay, blockers, move shot site blocker. So now our spline is here. We want to make sure we have wall component not locked so we can just select it. We're going to hit W to bring up the translate function. And we're going to just kind of gently wrap our spline around about half the object, about 180 degrees here. Okay. And you can also add more nodes. Sorry, goofed that a little bit. We're going to add a node to make it a bit of a gentler angle here. Okay. In hindsight, this is kind of not the best rock to demonstrate this on. See here, this is sticking out a little too far. We're just going to delete this one. Perfect. We got this wrapped around pretty nicely. I just discovered something. Instead of having to go here and right click copy and then paste in place, or left click, drag the mouse away, drag the mouse back on, and get a duplicate spline. The shortcut is left shift, left click. which is different than CoH2. Just control left click. Okay. You learn something new every day here, kids. Or folks. I assume most of us are adults. Okay, so we're going to adjust our spline here. Let's say we're having issues here. We want to be more precise. We don't want this kind of sticking through the rock. We can go ahead and place an entity blocker instead of the spline. If we go back to EPPS down here, we're going to navigate to gameplay. And then we're going to go to blockers, the first folder here. And we're going to find again our GB 1x6. This one, move shot site. Yeah. We go ahead, hit E to rotate. Move this in here. And bam. Now we've got our blocker here. Now, our issue here is that this territory inside the blocker is actually passable. So for the units that pair drop in, you can actually pair drop your unit inside the rock, and then it's stuck there for the rest of the game. So what we're going to want to do is go to the impass editor, which is this button here. Now, just to be safe, I like to check everything but navy, because navy only moves on water. So we're going to check infantry crush, vehicle medium crush, vehicle light, vehicle heavy, vaulting infantry, and trench crossing. To get a clearer picture of what we're working with here, we're going to regenerate all, and it's going to show us our outline of our blockers. Now we would actually want to refine this a little bit. You see this is sticking out way too far. But to get a clear sight of what's inside here, we're just going to navigate over here to our scenario tree, and we're going to make it invisible, and we're going to left click, and we're just going to paint this impasse here. So now nothing should be able to get through here except a boat, and we don't have boats, so everything is all good. Now if we go here, we regenerate all, just to be safe. Now if we deselect this tool, we get back our grid overlay, but you can also show the path map overlay. So this is basically showing, this is the equivalent in CoH2 of your generate precise map. So this is the meter by meter pathing. So the white is totally clear, the teal here, every color closer to what's the blank. We get rid of these blockers too. Everything that's in this kind of blank region is impassable entirely. Units will still go in the red, they'll still go in the brown, but it's just kind of showing you a bias of the pathfinding and how, what is it avoiding, what is it not avoiding, things like that. Generally, you're going to want as little colors as possible between things. So you want kind of wider, you want wider paths for the pathing engine to do its magic and make it work and be fun. Go back to none here. So actually, I want to show you guys a cool trick. So you can actually generate the precise map of specific crush types. So you go back to your path map, you go to the impasse map, and you're going to choose which pathing you want. So let's get rid of the trench crossing. And let's say we want to look at vehicle light pathing. And we're going to deselect this tool, and it's going to show us this path map is only for light vehicles. Now it looks more or less the same because you haven't added little objects here and there, but this is going to show us crush type by crush type what the pathfinding is like. So before we move on, I wanted to touch up on modifying your wall splines. So I don't know if this is super necessary for blockers, but in general, maybe you have a slope or something, because we're not having perfectly flat maps anymore. You have a little slope here and you want your object to conform. It's not a you just want to raise the height for whatever reason, you can, for the most freedom of maneuvering, you're going to want to go to the wall component here. You're going to want to adjust the alignment here to surface. If this doesn't work, if you're still getting some weird stuff, your next best bet is to change the alignment to none. And as you can see, our object just fell through the floor here. So what we have to do then is we want to adjust we're going to take our nodes, we're going to adjust their height. Back to 10 brings us back to where we were. Now let's say there's a bit of a steeper slope here. We want these two nodes, and it's going by node, not by object, so that's important to keep in mind. So we want these two nodes to be a little higher. So let's say we're going to put this one to 12. Sorry, this one to 15. And this one to 13. So the spline editor, it's a little imprecise, but might be necessary in some cases. It's basically saying, okay, this point is going to be 15 meters, this point is going to be 13, and it's trying to kind of average out your blockers here. Now, I don't know if this is super necessary for blockers. I have had issues using these blockers in my first map I've published where they're not actually stopping things I expect them to. So you might want to raise your blockers a little bit to cover more of the rock. I'm not sure, but it just another functionality that could be useful. It might be a little difficult to get used to, but in certain cases it might help you out. Okay, everyone, thanks for following along so far. The next step I want to talk about is atmosphere. So by default, you're just going to have a lot of this stuff. It's pretty overwhelming. I'd recommend, especially as you're first starting, to import an atmosphere file from another map. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that. Because this is originally I made this into like a late dusk setting, I think I want to borrow the dusk atmosphere from Twin Beaches. So we're going to go new mod, scenario, Twin Beaches. Here we go. Finish. We'll let it work its magic. Okay, and as you can see, we're loaded up here in Twin Beaches. I'm going to stop the playback here. Okay, we're going to go atmosphere. So the default atmosphere is always the first one. And as you can see, there are several. I think I'm going to steal both of these. So we're going to right click, save atmosphere presets, and we're going to save them wherever you want. I'm going to save it here, Beaches, atmosphere 1, save, come here, save, 2. Okay, I'm gonna go to File, Open. We're gonna go to our Black Forest we were looking at. Sorry, we want to go Open Mod, Black Forest. There we go. So under Atmosphere, we're going to add Atmosphere State. Now this is the really default here. Load Atmosphere Presets. Go CoH3 Maps. We'll load Atmosphere 1. We'll take everything, select all, and bam. we have our Twin Beaches setting. We can create another one, atmosphere state. Then we do load atmosphere presets, atmosphere 2. I'm going to select all. And you can also choose what you want specifically, right? So that's a great tool. So now we have the beautiful Twin Beaches atmosphere loaded in, clouds and everything. And this is definitely, a whole topic itself. The atmosphere stuff, there's so many things you can adjust. It's definitely daunting. But it's great to open up a pre-existing one and kind of manipulate it a little bit here and there to suit your needs. Moving on, let's say we want to test our mod and how do we do that? How do we get it ready? So first of all, we're going to need to go to territories, file, save, build mod. Hopefully it'll work. Maybe it won't because you have no territory. Okay, great. So our mod is built, and the default file path for the file that's exported is documents, my games, company of heroes 3, mods, extension, local. And here you can see our duplicate Black Forest right here. So we're gonna minimize this. We're going to open Steam, library, launch CoH3. So we're gonna go single player, skirmish, select map, modded, and we're going to choose our Black Forest map. Here we go. We're going to select, and then I recommend turning on Janne's 252's cheat commands mod. This will let you disable the AI. Plus, being in single player, you're able to tactical pause. So we're going to start the game here. So we can disable Fog of War. And as you can see, we don't have anything here except we have our rock. And the one thing I do want to show off here is called screenshot mode. So you do left control, left shift, question mark, and you disable the UI here. So now you can take beautiful pictures at full resolution, with Steam's F12 or whatever other program. And then to change that, you just go to settings, you do controls, view and remap controls, and it's right here. You can create a new profile and you're good to go. The final thing I wanted to talk about is preparing your mod for the Steam Workshop. So you can create any image you want to be your Steam cover image, and that's going to go in your asset folder. So you have your mod folder, assets, and you're going to make a new, your image is just going to be called mod.png, and it's going to go right here. And this way you'll get a beautiful preview image in the Steam Workshop. Make sure it's no wider than 2048 pixels. So I just make my standard, 16:9 image from a screenshot, and then scale it down to the 2048, and I keep the the aspect ratio the same so it doesn't get all weird. And then one last thing, every time you update your map, your Steam Workshop description is going to reset. So if I take you here, files I've posted, Tunisian Pass. Yeah, so every time you update your map, your description here is going to go back to the default. So I just save a notepad file somewhere easily accessible to you that you remember, that you can just copy paste in your description every time you want to update your map. Well, everyone, that's it for now. Thank you for watching. I hope these tips have been useful, helpful. But as I said, in the next few days, we're going to get the kind of the planned, fully fleshed out tutorial here started. and I'm really looking forward to it because I know people have had questions either in my YouTube comments or in the official Discord server for CoH3 or the World Builders Discord, and I've been answering a lot of questions, and I just wanted to use this video to kind of answer some of those before we really get going here.